This podcast is brought to you by Penji. Penji is a creative subscription service that gives you access to pre-vetted, agency-trained creatives from all over the world. From graphic design to illustrations to social media management and web development, it's all included for one monthly price. It's time to say goodbye to the hassle of searching for top-notch creative talent. With Penji, you get quality and consistency delivered right to your inbox every day. Carefully crafted for you by humans, so meet your new creative team today. Head over to penji.co for more and enter the coupon code located within the podcast show notes.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Fully Managed. You guys know what this podcast is about. We talk about marketing and business tips to help assist you in your business journeys. I'm your host, Penji's Partnership Coordinator, Daniela, and I'm joined today with a very special guest, Jason Yormark from Socialistics. I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
You got it.
Hi, Jason. How are you? I'm so excited to have you on the podcast.
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here as well. But before we get into all of the cool stuff about the podcast, I have some fun questions to ask you.
Sure.
These are just this or that, basically. So whatever you prefer, and you just tell me. And that's pretty much the entire game. There's no winner.
Okay.
It's just for fun.
Sure.
All right. So first question. Atari or Nintendo?
Nintendo.
Walkman or a cassette boombox?
Walkman.
Denim jacket or leather jacket?
Leather jacket.
MTV or VH1?
MTV.
The Breakfast Club or Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
The Breakfast Club.
I never watched Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Oh, I've seen them both, but yeah, definitely Breakfast Club.
Well, that's it. Thank you so much for joining, Jason. I Googled, I usually prepare questions, and I was going for some with you, and I put some on ChatGPT. I Googled some, and then I kind of just created this. Mm-hmm. And some of them were things that I did not know about. So, sure. I thought it were really interesting, and I just picked the ones that I thought were more interesting.
All right, let's go for it.
All right. So actually, I was talking about the questions for the game, but let's actually get into the podcast. Mm-hmm. To get everything started, we already know that you like leather jackets and the Breakfast Club, right? I think that's what we said. But tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do. Tell us about Socialistics, everything that we got to know.
Okay. Yeah, so I've had about, it's hard to admit, but about 30 years of experience in marketing. I got most of my experience at Microsoft back in around 2005. I moved from Chicago to Seattle to work for Microsoft, and that's really where everything kind of took off for me. So I was in the right place at the right time and got involved with social media right about when Facebook was transitioning from just colleges to the public domain, and just started to kind of get involved with that, and really that's where my career kind of took off. So I was at Microsoft for a while, launched social media for a variety of products and services there. I parlayed that into some agency experiences over the next 10 to 15 years, running social media teams, managing social media for all kinds of different brands, big and small. And always was wired to be an entrepreneur, but for me, it didn't really all come together until about 2018 when I launched Socialistics, and I haven't looked back since. We are a full-service social media agency. We've been in business for about 7-8 years, and my why was basically I wanted to live a life of freedom. You know, I wanted to live life on my terms. I wanted to work the way that I wanted to work, and luckily for me, all the experiences that I had had over the course of those 20 years or so led me to a point where I was ready and prepared to launch something that ultimately became successful. So we're a 7-figure agency, and we haven't looked back since. So I'm really thrilled and excited to be doing what I'm doing and to live a life of freedom and to be able to give that to others that have joined me in that adventure. Oh, you're muted. I can't hear you.
Sorry.
Sorry.
No, that's sorry. I think it's so interesting that you were involved with Facebook when they were doing the transition into kind of the public. So it means you've kind of been on social media. I know that we've had social media platforms before Facebook, but I feel like Facebook kind of marked a beginning of something new. Um, post like I think post Facebook, we've seen like so much change with social media, right? And I think like technically they kind of pioneered that. I know we had like MySpace and all these other websites before, but I feel like they just didn't cause the impact that Facebook did. And I think it's really interesting to hear that you've kind of been through that whole journey, kind of working in that field.
Yeah.
I imagine that it's made you have to change the way that you work multiple times, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was in the right place at the right time, so I was pretty thrilled to be able to kind of experience that as it was taking off, and ultimately, most of the work that I've done over my entire career is really just designed around storytelling and content creation. So, people throw around the term social media and kind of think that it's only applicable to like the Facebooks and the Instagrams and these platforms, but ultimately, human beings have always been, social. It's all about telling stories and engaging with people. The only thing that's changed is how we've done that over the years, whether it's the telephone or the internet, and now Facebook and Instagram and these platforms where most people are spending the majority of their time. So that's all that changes, is how we communicate with each other and how we engage with each other. So I've gotten to the point now where certainly I've enjoyed that technology journey. I think I miss some of the old school, just actually being in a room with people and having real conversations instead of just everything being digital. But it's a balance. It's not going anywhere. We're going to get new platforms. Things are going to evolve. AI is changing things dramatically. So I think ultimately, to be a successful marketer and entrepreneur, you just have to stay on top of the trends and how to leverage those sorts of things in responsible ways.
Yeah, for sure. I actually think that what you say is really true. Like we've always been social. I think it's just like the way that we have done it is different. And it's probably going to continue to change with everything. What I also wanted to ask you about, which is something that I saw when I was doing research on you guys, was that you kind of have this sort of anti-agency sentiment that you use. And on your about page, you talk about how like like outside of there's a billion agencies who are doing everything and you kind of want to give it a more human approach. And I'm interested in kind of understanding what that what does this signify in the context of what your business approach is I guess my question.
Yeah, I wanted to do things differently than most traditional agencies. I mean, I think, some have kind of done these things since I started, but ultimately what it came down to is just doing things differently. I'm a big believer in again, the why for me was always freedom. Living a life of freedom, I think, is the most powerful thing in the world, to be able to work when you want to, where you want to, how you want to. I think if you hire great people, you equip them with the tools and the resources to be successful. You should trust them to do that. And so we work within a very different type of context. For example, we don't do time tracking, which is, when I talk to most agency owners, they think I'm crazy, because that's kind of like the be all end all for agency to kind of determine, profitability and efficiencies and those sorts of things. But I always just felt anytime I've had to do that in my agency experiences, it just always felt like a drag. And I just never felt like it's never accurate. People typically when they're time tracking, they're going to inflate things. So it's never going to be entirely accurate. So again, I don't care how people work, when they work, where they work. All I care about is that they deliver results, is that they make our clients happy, that they're where they need to be when they need to be there. These are the sorts of things that matter. So you want to be in Spain and do that, whatever. You want to, if you want to do a lot of your computer work from 1 a.m. to 4 a.m, I don't care. Like, it just do you, live your life as long as you are where you need to be in meetings, and as long as you're doing your job and doing it well, who cares? And I'm not going to punish the person that is really good at what they do and can get it all done in 35 hours versus the person that takes 50 hours. To me, they're equally, it doesn't matter. Like everybody's different in terms of what they're able to do and what they're able to produce and how they do that. So lots of freedom. We have unlimited vacation. And that's really more just because, look, you need to take time off, make sure your stuff is done, make sure that your teammates are up to speed and can support you when you're out. It's that whole, like, I just, it's just freedom. Like, I just want people to kind of just not feel that they're, just tied to their job so much that they can live the life that they want to live.
That's amazing. Because I think, like, I was talking about this with my friend the other day, about how do you keep a team motivated if they are not necessarily going to be, because I think, like, and feel free to disagree with me, but I feel like the generation that is entering the workforce right now, right, have a more apathetic view towards work. It's kind of just been brewing, but I think Gen Z has been sort of really putting it at the forefront of just like distaste for working for people, for feeling like an employee. And I was talking about it to my friend, and I was like, how do you actually keep a workforce like this motivated? Because I feel like with boomers and everything, it was easier for them to give it their all at work. And now, we have terms like quiet quitting and people who are like saying that they don't like that. And I think what you're describing now is like a great way to keep people, because I would like to work, like if you tell me like a job description and then you tell me these things, if I feel more inclined to work at a place like this.
Sure.
Than if you just tell me like the things that I have to do and then I get like government mandated holidays just because I have to. And I think people are inherently going to be less motivated to work at a place, especially if it's just a job. And unless you give them a reason to like be happy to be there. And I think like that feeling of suffocation is probably like taking that away from someone is probably one of the best things that you can do to, at least in my opinion, to keep someone wanting to work.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't come without its challenges for sure. I mean, I think ultimately the team that I have in place right now we've been together for a good 3, 4, 5 years. There's been a few folks that have come into the here and haven't been able to kind of handle that sort of freedom. I would say. I think it takes a certain type of person to be able to understand the give and take in a relationship like that. One of the things I can be guilty of is being too generous and giving too much freedom. And if you don't hire the right people that, are self-motivated, have an entrepreneurial spirit, have high emotional intelligence, like there's these factors that come into the person that can come into an environment that's given that kind of freedom, that won't abuse it, that won't take advantage of it. And that can thrive in an environment that requires them to really, be able to be self-driven. I mean, obviously, I mean, we engage and we do team things and we certainly support each other. But at the end of the day, when you're working in a remote environment, there's a level of self-management that has to exist. And some people just ultimately can get really comfortable with that type of freedom, and ultimately it affects their performance. They have a shifting mindset of what a work week or what hard work actually is. And that ultimately can lead to a lot of problems, especially when you're a small sized agency, because if one person starts to falter, it affects the business much more than it would if you're this larger agency with hundreds of people. So it's give and take. And then that's fallen on me and my leadership team to really make sure that we're really smart about who we hire and who we bring in, and how to creatively come up with ways to kind of manage the business when you don't have tools like time tracking, or there is a lot of oversight. Like, how do you still ensure that what we're doing is efficient, that we maintain profitability, and that we ultimately can continue to be successful with, a freedom-driven type of culture.
Yeah, actually, I think what's interesting is that the remote model kind of got popular during COVID. I think for a lot of companies, and I remember like hearing a lot of people saying that they enjoyed the idea of just not having to wake up and commute to work and stuff like that, but it was hard to learn how to self-regulate and to kind of have that discipline. I don't know if that comes with the idea of like as a leader, because I don't own a company. I'm not sure if maybe it's like teaching your employees how to do that, right? Like how do you work without getting micromanaged?
Yeah.
How do you like kind of own your own work, or if it's like you said, just like a personality thing.
Yeah, I think for me, I learned a tremendous amount about hiring when I was at Microsoft. I really went through the gauntlet through their training. I mean, 6 months of my time there was just interviewing people. So I was very fortunate to kind of gain those skills, and it's certainly benefited me, since then. So I think ultimately, if you, again, I always say it's about hiring people with the untrainable traits. Like, again, are they a good writer, a good communicator? Do they have high emotional intelligence? Do they have an entrepreneurial spirit? Are they self-driven? Do they have a good heart? Like these things that inherently you are or are not. Like that's the most important thing to look for, because training somebody to use a tool or a piece of technology, that's easy. So it's just those core traits that either a person is or isn't. And that doesn't mean that people that aren't those things aren't valuable or potentially a valuable employee. Some people are wired, they need the structure, right? They need I start work at this time and I end work at this time, and when I'm done, I'm done. That doesn't work in our environment. I need people that, their work life and their personal life are kind of intertwined, not to the extent that I'm saying that they have to work a ton more than or anything, but they love their work and they love what they do, and they feel like they're a part of the business and that they contribute to making the business successful. So they rarely think of work in a stressful way, or like, oh, I like for example, I can't remember the last time I have ever dreaded a Monday. I remember that when I worked for companies. Like I always lived for the weekends, and then like, oh great, here we go, Monday again. My commute, and I'm going to work, and I remember dreading that, but I don't feel that anymore. And I think that's freedom, right? That's what I think I and my team feel like. We don't dread Mondays because some people work on weekends, and then on Thursday they go get a massage at 2 p.m. It's like, so there really isn't like this structure of like, I work from this time to this time, I work on these days. It's like, you do you work when you want to work, you live your life the way that you want to live it. And if you do that, it makes your job not feel so much like a job. It just feels like this is a part of my life that is balanced and enjoyable. And, don't get me wrong, all jobs have some levels of stress. Clients can be a pain in the ass sometimes. But ultimately, you don't dread what you do. You love what you do. And that seems to be the case because I have people that have been with me for 5+ years, which is unheard of in the agency game. It's usually the shelf life of an agency employee is a year or 2 years tops. So
people don't want to like commit to one place. So I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
Now moving to kind of a little bit more to what you guys are actually, like the service and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious because you've been with the social media game for so long. What do you think are some misconceptions that people are currently having when it comes to doing business and I guess having social media integrated into marketing?
Well, there's a lot. I think a lot of it just depends on any particular client. I think one of the biggest things that I've come across over the years is that social media, when you're a social media agency, you're dealing with things that like an SEO agency or like a website agency isn't dealing with. A website is a tangible thing. We need a new website. I pay for this thing. You build this thing. I can see it. I can experience it. I don't really have, opinions about, the viability of a website. Social media is this whole other thing, because what happens is sometimes you'll get decision makers or business owners that have a personal opinion about social media. I don't like Facebook. I don't like Twitter X. Like, I think it's dumb. Okay, that's fine. I can relate. I'm not a big fan of social media personally either. I don't spend a tremendous amount of time on it personally, but that doesn't mean that I don't think that it's a viable strategy and platform for my business or for businesses. You kind of had to separate the two. Just because I don't personally like it doesn't mean that there aren't billions of
Yeah.
people using it on a regular basis, and that it's a viable and a necessary place to be for your business to thrive. So sometimes a lot of those folks allow their personal opinion to influence their decision making or opinion of how, where, and when to use it for their business. Usually, when we come across situations like that, I avoid them. We say no more than say we say yes. If I have to convince somebody that social media is something that they should do, that's usually a recipe for failure because they're not going to have the patience to see it through. They're a month in or 2 months in, they're going to bail because it's not revolutionizing their business. It's not a get rich quick scheme. It takes time to kind of build that out over time. So that's something that typically is pretty frequent that happens. Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I also feel like it's why would you go to a social media agency to help you if you don't believe in social media? I think at that point,
They
you
feel
might
like
as
they have to, or it's a directive. I mean,
oh,
it's kind of like they know they need to do it, but they don't really want to do it. So they're just kind of feeling like it's kind of like a necessary evil. So again, we avoid those things. If we ever get a sense that they're coming from that perspective, we don't want to waste our time because we spend a tremendous amount of time in the pitch process, and we don't want to go down that road for folks that aren't, already. I don't want potential prospects that have to be sold on social media. I want prospects that have to be sold on who's going to do their social media for them. Like they already, they understand the importance of it and they get it. They don't have to be sold on should we do this. They only need to be sold on who are we going to do this with.
yeah, that
So
makes
that's where we focus our time and effort.
would you what is your opinion? Because I think that I at least for me, I see two waves of businesses on social media, which is like some businesses who go all in on it that are, like putting a lot of efforts into social. And I see businesses who reject it a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you mentioned, like people who just don't want to do it
Mm-hmm.
because of whatever reasons.
Yeah.
But I think what I see in businesses who go all in on social media sometimes is kind of like a misdirection because I've seen a lot of companies kind of trying to do viral trends. I think video right now on social media is very popular, right? So so we'll see a lot of people trying to do these type of short form videos that are quirky and fun and edgy because I feel like that's kind of what's cool right now. I feel like social media companies like Ryanair and Duolingo, they kind of pioneered that wave a little bit. I know like the Wendy's tweets were also cool back with of like being edgy too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that whilst it might work for some companies, I don't know if there's necessarily a benefit for everyone who's doing this, but I feel like I see a lot of businesses kind of trying to do that. And I feel like there's a lot of sort of like misdirection, at least in my opinion, of people thinking that this is going to help them. And I always see it and I wonder, like, depending on what business is doing it, I'm like, is this going to help you actually convert any kind of thing into anything worthwhile? Or is this just like you're just doing trends?
Yeah. Well, I think it's just like anything else. You have to have something interesting to say. If you have a Me Too product and it doesn't have any differentiation, or if you have nothing interesting to say, of course you're going to fail. And that's another thing that we look for, right? Is if we're talking to prospects and they're not doing anything interesting, their product doesn't have anything that differentiates, there isn't an interesting story to tell. It doesn't matter how good we are, what we do, we can't, that's going to fail inevitably. So you got to have something interesting to talk about or to do or to say. And to your point, you don't really plan for viral things to happen. They just kind of do. I mean, you can put yourself in a position to have a higher probability of that happening. Yeah, but if you're doing interesting things, if you're a good storyteller, if you make great content, those things will naturally happen. But it's not easy to do. I think ultimately the companies that you had kind of mentioned, the ones that are successful with it, they are because they embrace it and they're passionate about it and they believe in it and it's authentic. That's what works. Too many companies treat their social media as a checkbox. Oh, we posted 3 times this week, so we're good. Well, Okay, great. Well, why? What did you accomplish? What was the purpose? So it's these sorts of things why businesses often fail when it comes to their social medias because they just don't treat it as seriously as they might other things. It's just like anything else. It's like what you put into it is what you get out of it. So that's why a lot of agencies exist because most of these businesses don't have the expertise, the time, the passion, the desire to kind of navigate those things successfully.
Do you think that businesses can actually, like, there's a certain type of business that could thrive or grow, scale, whatever, without relying on social media?
Yeah. I mean, it's not the only thing. I think you'd be hard. I think you'd be pretty hard pressed to find a company that couldn't stand to benefit it from it in some capacity, and that just comes down to the hard truth, which is again the sheer volume of people that use these platforms on a daily basis. It's not about whether this is cool or that is cool. At the end of the day, if you've got billions of people using a thing, inherently your customers or your potential customers are there. And they may not be looking for you there, but if you've done your work and your due diligence and you're doing your thing over time, your stuff's going to get in front of them and it's a touch point for your business in one way or another. We do a lot of work for B2B. Companies are doing things that aren't that sexy.
Yeah.
But just because somebody it's the whole two screen thing, right? Most people that are in front of their TV are on their phone or on their iPad at the same time, doing the scrolling. So I always talk, yeah, maybe that person isn't necessarily looking for your B2B product or service, but if they're just scrolling and they went to your website a couple of days ago and you're running a retargeting program and boom, a case study comes up in front of them. That's the use case, right? It's about how do you get your stuff in front of the right people, in the right places and the right times and the right number of times so that you ultimately create momentum for your either lead funnel or your products or services. So, but yeah, there's businesses that of course can thrive that, a good example would be, like one of those just small restaurants that just has incredible word of mouth. Their stuff is
Yeah.
amazing. They can get by without it technically, but they could also probably do even better if they did use it. So
I feel like I feel like my take is that you kind of have to dabble on social media. Like you said, I think a lot of B2B businesses, obviously your clientele is not going to be scrolling on TikTok
yeah.
on to look for a SaaS company service for work, right? But I think the brand awareness, like you said, is undeniable. And I've also kind of noticed that like those small restaurants that have like incredible word of mouth will still get traction on social media because
Mm-hmm.
an
Because
influencer
other
will go
people.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And start to be like, oh, like raving about the place and then make it more popular.
Yeah.
So even if that business is not directly on social media, the usage of the customers
Yeah.
of that is going to inherently create that virality.
Yeah.
I also think that I don't know if again, feel free to disagree with me, but I feel like the way that users interact with businesses has changed because of social media.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've seen a lot of especially in B2C, customer service questions on social media platforms for businesses. I've seen a lot of people legitimizing the trustworthy of a business through checking social media accounts. So it's not necessarily just for like getting brand awareness for people, but I feel like sometimes it becomes like a different way because it's like a touch point almost for people to interact with businesses. Whereas before, I think it was websites. I think you obviously still need websites, but I've noticed people kind of going to Instagram first
Mm-hmm.
before the website.
Yeah, I think, look, if you don't use it, other people are going to use it. So, on your behalf and talk about you online, even if you're not using it. But I always say, if you're not going to take it seriously, if you're not going to do it well, don't do it at all. There's no reason to half ass anything in life, quite frankly. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't try things and put things out in the world. But if you're not going to take it seriously, if you're not going to try and do the very best that you can with a certain thing, then don't do it. I always say it's better to be great at less than average at everything. Some businesses don't have the resources to do everything that they would like to do. So when it comes to social media, if you just, you get out of it what you put into it. So if you're just going to post generic stuff, what's the point? Like I always like when I've come across folks that do that, I'm like, okay, well, what are you getting out of it? How is it making your business more successful? I don't know. You
Yeah.
don't know. So it's not. No. Well, then why are you doing it? I don't know. So it's just like it's those sorts of things that just it's just a waste of time, you know. If you're not going to take it seriously, if you're not going to use it effectively, take that time and energy and put it towards an area that you can or you are passionate about or is going to move the needle for you. Or if you've got the resources, hire somebody that can help you do it right.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Shouldn't you just like, because I think maybe just like get someone else to do it for you if you hate it so much.
For sure.
Um,
For sure.
yeah. I feel like that's probably one of the benefits of scaling and being a business owner is that you can kind of just unload to other people what you don't want to do.
Yeah.
In an ideal world, everyone would be working on things that they adore doing and are good at
Right.
doing. Because I think that's when you're going to put your best foot forward is when you're doing things that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
So I think obviously that's not how reality is, but I think working towards it is going to give you.
Yeah, it's tough. It's different though, right? It's like, for example, you know, accounting or things that are kind of behind the screen that you have to do as a business owner. Yeah, you have to do those things, and there's a lot of things that aren't exciting about it. But when you talk about creating content or putting things out in the world that people are going to consume, it's really hard to fake that. Like if you know, it's not one of those things that you can really just, oh, I have to do that. Like if you don't love it, and you're not passionate about it, or you're not good at it, or you're not willing to kind of put in the work, people can tell. You know, people can tell whether that's, you know, so it's not worth in that context. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to do that if you're not going to either A, be committed to doing it right, or B, bringing somebody in that will.
I think that I've also been surprised about how passionate people can be about really niche topics. So even with things like accounting, you'll find someone who's really into it for some reason because they like numbers,
Sure.
and they'll come up with really cool things. Because I don't know, I've like especially for the podcast, I've talked to people who tell me that they're very passionate about very specific things with marketing. I talked to someone who told me that he was super into like backlinks and SEO, and he just like really loved doing that. And I think that's such a specific thing to tell someone that you are super into, especially I know that it's very popular within marketing, but it would have never crossed my mind that there was a person or like a group of people that are really into doing that. And it's not just like a part of their marketing strategy, but this is something that they genuinely love doing.
Well, as a
Right.
business owner, those are the people that you want to find and put
Yeah.
on those sorts of things. You know, I always say it's great. It's better to find people that are really great at one thing versus spread out over too many things because they'll never be as good at those singular things as somebody that focuses specifically on that.
Yeah, for sure. I think like and it's always going to allow you to be more like have an expertise on it for
Yeah.
sure.
For sure.
I think that's a great note to end this podcast on, Jason, because
Sure.
we are running out of time. It has been so much fun. But before we end it, I do want to give you the space to tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find you if
Sure.
they would want to talk to you, if they would want to work with you, if anything that we spoke about resonated with them. Floor's yours.
Sure. So my agency is Socialistics, which if you search for, you'll find it, but ultimately socialistics.com. And then personally, I have my own website, which I've been writing on for 20 plus years. I also wrote a book called Anti-Agency that I give away for free. So if you're interested in starting a business, it's a great kind of roadmap on how to do that realistically. So you can find me at Jason Yormark, YORMARK.com.
Awesome. I will be adding the links to that on the description so that people can easily talk to you. And guys, subscribe, follow, listen, do the whole thing. Thank you so much, Jason, for being here today.
For sure. Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to Fully Managed, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest. And to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend and, of course, subscribe.